Titterpigs, oh yeah. They're gonna talk about sweet, sweet RPGs. And it's the Titterpigs, the RPG podcast. Am I getting paid for this one?
Welcome back, listeners. We are here with another episode of Titterpigs, where we continue to prove the trope that if you're over 40 and have an opinion in the tabletop RPG industry, you are required by law to have a podcast. So today is a rather special episode. We do have a special guest here with us, and also we have a special co-host because my ever-loving co-host Keith unfortunately could not make this episode. He is busy moving his son, who graduated from college, into his new house. But we do have a special co-host stand-in here, and it is Bud, as you know, from BudsRPGReviews and Bud and Griff's
Creepshow.
Gaming Creepshow. Yes, thank you, Bud. Welcome, and thank you. Thank you for taking the time to come in and co-host this episode of Titterpigs.
No problem. I didn't have anything better to do.
which is why I asked you. Because the other four people said that they actually had important stuff to do. So thank you for being my fourth choice.
Well, to be fair, I did tell you to ask Griff before me. Because the reason being, he has actually backed the Weird Wizard Kickstarter completely, everything in print kind of thing. So he would have had a lot to say, but he's a programmer and he's on the deadline at the moment, so he couldn't make it. Yeah,
no worries with that. We love Griff, and he's always welcome onto the podcast. So, but with that, and again, thank you, Bud, for joining us. The reason why we're here today is we have a special guest here, Robert J. Schwalb, who is here with us in the Titterpigs studio, and we are here to discuss his recent success of his Shadow of the Weird Wizard Kickstarter, and maybe talk a little bit about Rob himself as we discuss some of his beginnings and also where Schwalb Entertainment may be going in the near future. Rob, thank you so much for joining us today.
It is my pleasure, and thank you very much for having me.
Yeah,
I love talking the talk and hanging out with folks. Yeah. So this is great. Every opportunity I can get to break out of my cocoon, I will take.
Right. So and you have been busy. I do, I follow your little bit of social media presence that you do have personally, and you've been running a roller coaster since the beginning of the Kickstarter. But it seems to be a wonderful success and has been doing tremendous. If I'm not mistaken, it's double or more so than the Shadow of the Demon Lord Kickstarter campaign went. So that's excellent. But before we get into that, I hope you don't mind, because we do have quite a few listeners who may not be familiar, which I feel is inexcusable with your bibliography and background. But just so people can get to know you a little better, we have a little thing here where we ask our people who are on the show, what is it, and that brought you into either tabletop RPGs or just gaming in general, if you have a little story regarding that.
When I was a little kid, I played board games with my dad. We played chess, and we play Wizard's Quest from Avalon Hill and a bunch of other things during that era. And so I was always into games and gaming. I knew about Dungeons and Dragons at a pretty young age, but I didn't really know what it was. And I had this idea of what it could be. And so my parents loaded us all up into a rocket ship, and we crash landed in the South. And there I have remained stranded in this land of of humidity and swampiness where I will probably die. But beneficially, well, the benefit of coming here was I was able to. We were living in town, and we'd moved a couple of times. We went to this house, and there's this kid who lives behind me, and he's like, "Hey, my mom picked this up at a yard sale. Do you want it? I'll sell it to you for $25." And I said, "Sure." And it was Rahaja by Tracy and Laura Hickman, which is it's a basic D&D Dungeons and Dragons, not advanced Dungeons and Dragons module, what the old guard call adventures. So I had no rules to go with this game, or this adventure. And so I then decided that what I was going to do was figure out how that rule set would work by just extrapolating information from the adventure. And in doing so, they came my very first role-playing game, Passages. So with Passages, that was kind of we played that in the playground a couple of times. It was really exciting for the kids in 6th grade. And my friend, another friend said, hey, took pity on me. He said, if you want to know how to play D&D, just spend the night at my house. My mom will make lasagna, and we'll talk about comic books and make a D&D character. So I went over and we did the D&D character thing, and I found the entire process miserable and excruciating, even though we were still operating out of the red box thing. I just didn't understand why I had to care about all this stuff. I mean, I don't care if it's a two-headed sword or if it's a long sword. I don't care. It didn't make any difference to me at all the time. And I was pretty sure that by the end of that night, my career with D&D is over. But then a week later, we went back over to Landon's house and we played, and it was myself, the kid who got me into D&D, and this other kid named Travis. And Travis and I are both playing 2 characters each. Travis playing Sticky Fingers and Nastor, I think. And I was playing what originally was called Booger, and he got upgraded to Ator once I realized how cool this game was. And Pardue, named after Tom Hanks's D&D character for Monster and Mazes. And I was hooked. I was hooked for life. And that was that one afternoon of playing D&D and going through Caves of Chaos, or just keeping the Borderlands. And something about the fact that we're making our way through this dungeon, and we were just a time when the Commodore 64 and Atari were the biggest graphical interfaces of these kinds of things you could do, and having the ability where my imagination was completely fired just hooked me. And granted, I did halfway through murder my other character because I only wanted to play one character, not 2. And then this character would go on to reach the upper heights of 39th level with castle and a pet dragon and all the other things that you'd expect that children to do, and even went on a god-killing spree through deeds and demigods. So, it's what you do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing, because I do feel that those who didn't discover it in 1974, because I think you and I are about the same age, so we were just freshly out of the womb at that time. But those who discovered it later in life, I do feel kind of discovered the way you did, because it was very similar for me and other people that I know. We weren't given the game proper. Like my discovery was my friend's dad essentially gave me a copy of a Castle Amber, and just sat there looking at this like, what do I do with this? And as you alluded to, you just kind of make stuff on the fly, because this thing is so amazing and looks so cool. I want to know what it does, but I don't have the owner's manual. So let's just see if we can create an engine of our own. But you went a lot further than we did. That was like, after a certain point, it's like, oh well, here's the book, kids. It's like, oh, why didn't you lead with this? But no, that's fantastic. And I also applaud you for having memories of your first characters, because some of those things have just filtered away. My
nerd was very strong back in those days. Still is, I guess. I get, right. And I don't think I can hand in my nerd card yet. But it was funny that, because as part of my origin story, so to speak, my mom was and still remains fairly religious, and she was convinced that D&D was going to rip my soul out of my body and drag it screaming into hell. And of course, as I got older, I realized, like, Mom, if Satan was real, the surest way to do it when I'm 15 is just send me a succubus, and I'm there, right? I mean, to be fair. But she forbade me from playing Dungeons and Dragons. And because of that decision that I had to, because I was young and I still was living in fear of a vengeful lord, I agreed. But I also played everything else. So it gave me exposure to games that I probably would never have encountered: Paranoia, Twilight 2000, Traveler, GURPS, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, obscure things. Because I would absorb all of it, and I have always been deeply interested in the actual systems that go into the games, and more so about just the mechanics of the games and how they kind of play than actually playing. But I still would, of course, play and have a great time doing so.
Right.
Do you still have your notes for passages, and are you going to Kickstarter?
It's funny you mention that. I don't have the notes for passages anymore. That's a big ask, but I have actually thought. On my desktop, I do have a folder called Passages, as I've been doing a lot of these interviews, and my interest in going back to a super primitive RPG experience where you gain a level every time you leave the dungeon map seems to be fun, but it won't be kickstarted because I don't want to say this on the record, but I will say that it's highly unlikely I'm going to put myself through another Kickstarter.
Right.
Make sure you get that, Scott.
Yeah.
this one's been a beast.
I will reward that in editing. Go. I am going to do many more Kickstarters.
I'm going to do a Kickstarter next week. What are you talking about? A man with 10 Kickstarters simultaneously.
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's Kickstarter takes years off your life. From most of the people I know who have gone through them, it's not sunshine and rainbows and like, here's a bunch of money, have fun with it. We all are aware it's a lot more work and a lot more logistics and things involved than just thanks for the money, here's your books.
I'm actually just 29. The listeners can't see me, but you guys can. And I'm waiting for my beard to turn white. I mean, it's nowhere close yet, but yeah. No,
I think I'm actually older than you two guys, aren't I?
Right.
I was born in 72.
Yeah.
I must have had an easy life.
You must have. Look at those baby cheeks.
I know.
Oh, so interesting though, because obviously your introduction to tabletop role-playing games did give a bit of a premonition to what you would be doing later in life. And so just a bit out of curiosity, as you were getting older and started to expand with your with the amount of games you've been playing, was there a particular moment where you're like, this is something that I want to do? And then how was it that, what was it that led you into the actually working within the tabletop role-playing game industry?
I never thought that I would be doing this for a living. I never thought that I would work on an edition of D&D. I never thought that I would write D&D books. I never thought that I'd run my own company, any of that stuff at all. As I was I kind of entered it like some people do. I entered a hard burnout phase in the latter days of high school, and I had, by the time I reached college, I was so crispy and very much enamored with anything that would kind of dull my senses, if you get my meaning.
Yep.
I dropped out of college. There was a pregnancy scare with a girlfriend. Didn't happen. But then I decided I would go into McDonald's management instead. And I did that for a number of years. And that trauma stays with me even to this day, years and years later. I still have nightmares of working at McDonald's and dealing with all the fun stuff there. But so then I got married, went back to school, and I had these big ambitions of becoming a great writer. But it was like one of those things where it's like you just talk the talk, right? Like so many people just talk about, I'm doing this thing, I'm doing that thing, and it's just a thing they just talk about. It's like I got this great idea, but I'm never gonna. And I was kind of one of those. It was my position, but I'm certainly not gonna write a book. I mean, I'm gonna think about writing a book, and I'm gonna sit down and mull it over, but I'm never gonna do it. But this was like at the boom. D20 system was booming. D&D third edition had just come out, maybe about a year, and there was this vacuum created by the need for writers, And I got sucked into that vacuum like so many other of my contemporaries. We all kind of poured in to fill the needs of all these budding studios that were popping up everywhere. And so I remember that I was selling carpet and hardwood floor at the time. Mm-hmm. And I had a second job working at a liquor store. And we had been in our house for maybe 6 months. And I started doing freelance work. And I worked did some D20 stuff for Necromancer Games, Mongoose, Green Running Publishing. And there are companies that I pitched to that no one remembers. Bastion Press, do you remember those guys? Or the Scarab Games. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to do all these I was looking for any kind of work I could get. I went to Origins. That's where I first met Chris Pramus. We hit it off, I think, pretty well. And that led to more work. And then Gen Con that year led to even more work. Fantasy Flight Games hired me to do the Grimm D20 thing for the Horizon line, where you play kids sucked into a twisted fairy tale world. I was working on Black Company campaign settings for the Ronins, along with Book of Fiends. Yes. So I was doing all this stuff, and then Green Ronin hired me to take over their line development for D20. And so that's when I took that over and ran that line until I moved on to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, Song of Ice and Fire, and did all the freelancing while doing all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and I was in. By that point, it was like, well, I'm far enough into this, and I'm working 100-hour weeks. I guess I should probably stick it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. But and I were talking, of your own bibliography, and you've been involved in several different things, from D&D proper to all of the other aspects, Warhammer, the stuff you've done for Green Ronin and whatnot, and it's just prolific. There's looking at there's things. Oh wow, he did this also. I mean, like Grimm and both. What is the? I had it up here in my notes. Apologies, but the Witch Hunter, the Invisible World. Things such as that I've picked up recently at a convention in Los Angeles, and it's just. It's just you've seemed to have bounced around, but a lot of the things that you end up writing for does fall under a particular theme. A lot of the things tend to be a bit of the, I don't think darker side's the right term, but I mean you're writing books about demons and devils, and of course Warhammer and things like Grimm and things like Witch Hunter. Was this type of thematic thing something that you were interested in doing? I do know that you, seeing some of the books that you mentioned you read, your musical background and things that you, or not musical background, but the type of music that you talk about online. I mean, I'm the one who referenced the Tom Waits reference that you did. That kind of that darker, seedier side. Was this something that fell in your lap, or was this something that just came easy to you, and that's why you tend to write more things in regards to that?
Well, I think that a lot of this comes from my own upbringing in a deeply religious family. My dad was a minister for a time. There was my mom and my dad met working for the Salvation Army, and I've got the whole religious side of a family. And so there was a lot of fear and loathing about the imminent end of all things growing up. And this idea that there were demons all around and all those other kinds of things that terrified me as a kid. And when I started kind of pushing back against that narrative, I found that I was prepared to peer into the void, so to speak, with an unflinching eye. I see it as an opportunity for me to kind of burn out a lot of that I guess I hate to say it, but trauma of my upbringing. And so with that in mind, I'm not afraid to explore really dark and awful topics to an extent, right? I mean, there are limits of what I will do. I mean, I'm not going to, you're not going to find animal harm in my books. It's for one of the things I'm just not going to do. And there are other areas and other things that I also won't tackle. But, you want a big demon made of dicks? that waddles around and sprays
and who doesn't?
everywhere. Yeah, and who doesn't? I'm your guy. I can make that monster for you and make it fun and scary and hilarious, because I find that there's at the start of my career, I was always like, we got to keep it serious, we got to keep it dark, we got to keep it scary. And now it's just like, nah, the right tone is Evil Dead 2. We need everything should be like, it's awful, but it's also so awful that it's almost funny. And the only thing you can really do is laugh about it. And so the Ronins used to call me Dr. Evil because of my work on the Book of Fiends, because it was so over the top in so many ways. And so, yeah, it stuck. So I got a reputation for writing the grittier things that people probably don't need or want to explore.
So out of interest, if you were to create a demon made of dicks, what would you call it?
It'd be a cockamental, I think, is probably what I'd call it. And I imagine that it's probably going to be, what would happen was that, because I really like the whole 2-3 stage monster. So it'd probably come at you looking like Grimace. So it's all flaccid. And then as the combat's going and it's getting more excited, it grows these big spikes. And then right at the end, climax, it just explodes. And of course, if your characters are bathed in its ejaculate, then what would probably happen would be that those characters become pregnant with little versions of that thing, and then have to figure out how to get that out of their bodies before it comes to fruition.
I mean, sometimes these things write themselves, don't they?
Oh, absolutely.
They totally do. Yeah,
and the only way to send it back to the existential plane of cocks is to cast whiskey dick on it, so it turns flaccid and disappears. That's awesome. Oh, so
I was thinking of Orcus Dickus, but
Orcus Dickus is good.
Yeah. Hey, wait a minute. So we may kind of dive back into some of those things as we discuss Shadow the Weird Wizard, but that's what we want to talk about, because you are. How many days are left on the Kickstarter? 9
days left. Yeah.
And you've I haven't checked recently. I haven't refreshed it here, but yes, you've reached 321,000, which brings up the Kickstarter goals to where is it currently, Rob?
How many percentages are
Weird Treasures? So you've currently
Weird
unlocked
Treasures.
Weird Treasures.
Yeah,
yes.
we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Carry on.
Yeah, I was just going to say. So for the uninitiated, can you tell the listeners what Weird Wizards is, and then maybe we can also talk about what makes it different between Weird Wizards and what it's built on is Shadow the Demon Lord. Right.
Well, the big thing about Weird Wizard is that there's a whole lot of folks that are running away from this burning, collapsing society.
Yeah.
And your characters, the characters you create using the rules in the game, are kind of there to help them along and help them reestablish themselves and create a better, brighter future for the survivors of the fall of the old country. Now, into this area that they're making their new homes, it's largely been untouched because of this sinister presence of the man named the Weird Wizard, who has his own realm off further to the east. But these are the borderlands. These just kind of edge up there. No one really has been too cool or curious about settling here until he vanishes. Well, his absence has created all sorts of opportunities for things to escape from under his dominion. It allows some of the weird magic that defines his realm to spill in. And it also presents new threats to the folks who are running away from and trying to rebuild their lives from the old country. Now, this game is a game about hope and rebuilding and high adventure and mysteries revealed. Where Demon Lord is about. Well, let me put it another way. I had a direct message on Twitter this morning, and the guy said, "So it seems like both these games are dealing with bad situations," and I was like, "Well, not really. They are the situation in Weird Wizard is bad to start, but the end point is that it's going to get better, and you have an opportunity to create a better world. In Demon Lord, it's a bad situation, and then you're all going to die.
Right.
So that's how those two things kind of work, and then why they're different. Demon Lord is apocalyptic horror fantasy. This is more high fantasy with some gray murkiness around the edges.
Right. Right. Oops, we lost Bud, but we will carry on here. Hello, listeners. Scott here, and I hope you are enjoying this episode of Titterpigs. Do you know that we're now monetized on Spotify? That's right. For as little as 99 cents a month, you can help sustain future episodes and other special events. All you need to do is go to our Spotify homepage, click the About section, and there you will find the support link, or click the link in the description. Know that Keith and I really appreciate any support we get from our listeners, no matter if it's a bit of pocket change or simply sharing Titterpigs with other people. And now, back to the episode. So yeah, I myself, I'm intimately familiar with Shadow the Demon Lord. It on several different levels. One, it was the second game that I introduced my son to after he discovered 5th edition. He was a preteen, right? So he discovered 5th edition with his friends, and at the time, I wasn't aware that he was getting into role playing games. He was about maybe 11 or 12 at the time. And we were at at my daughter's softball game. He's off with his friends. He comes back with his character sheet and said, Daddy, are you aware of Dungeons and Dragons? And of course, it's that moment where, like, son, let's take a walk. So we enjoyed a few years of a fifth edition, but I can tell he was getting itchy. So he wanted to try something new. And so I, not really being familiar with Shadow the Demon Lord and its content, I threw out a couple suggestions, of which he looked into it. And he says, well, this sounds like a lot of fun. And then of course, reading into it. And of course, the inevitable thing that everyone points to, I know this is maybe becoming old hat, but he discovers the hateful defecation spell and says, Dad, can you run this for me and my friends? And I'm go, absolutely, when your mother's not home. We will most definitely run this. And they had an absolute blast. I mean, of course, with and that's the type of age where you can have fun with this, because they're not taking it seriously. They're not offended by it, but they really enjoyed, likewise, the mechanics, because it dialed everything up to 11 with them. 5th edition was what it was. They were having fun with it, but they wanted something different and new, and just had these, and it exposed them to this wonderful world of role-playing games. And that was their jumping point, where my son now, he's dozens of games, he's running games, he's writing his own rules, he's writing his own homebrew and stuff. And right now his current favorite is Morkborg. So there's a lateral kind of thing to that going on. But it I do point out to a lot of people as I'm running it for them, because the word has spread, and people like, hey, Scott, are you going to play that poopy game for me? Are you going to run it for me? And it's like, absolutely. I said, but it's so much more than that. And they're like, yeah. But when am I getting that spell? I'm like, you do realize there's another spell that makes your junk fall off, right? They're like, oh, really? When do I get that one? So it may seem adolescent and childish to some people, but for others, it is. I wouldn't call it eye-opening, but it's refreshing to have a game that, one end, like you said, deals with the serious aspect of all hope is lost. We're all going to die at some point. Nothing's stopping this demon lord. But if we're going to hell in a bucket, we might as well enjoy the ride, which is how I run a lot of the games. And so with that, was that kind of like the onus for creating Weird Wizard? Was it to create something that's a little bit more accessible for people who weren't into that? And the poop and the spells aside, but just into the theme of what Shadow the Demon Lord is, to make something that maybe the opposite side of the same coin, but is going to be more accessible to people as far as the general the general population of the gaming hobby.
With Demon Lord, I started design on Demon Lord almost immediately after my time at Wizards had come to an end.
Yeah,
and with any kind of collaborative process that you've got a lot of different cooks in the kitchen, there's going to be some tension. And I mean, I left on good terms with Wizards, and I still count many of the people there still as good friends.
Yep.
But I was ready to do something else that was my own and reflected my sensibilities about what I look for in gaming, what a complexity level that I could manage while being a little drunk, and also that would kind of reflect my sense of humor, right? I may be 49, but I still find poop jokes hilarious, and a lot of people do, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But the point about like looking at ways that I could thumb my nose at established conventions in fantasy role playing, while at the same time giving audiences the best part of any kind of fantasy campaign to be the backdrop for the entire experience was crucial. Were major goals that drove the design of that particular product. And it's been an opportunity for me to explore other kinds of things too. Like there are the world's presented in the core book is pretty bleak and hopeless, but as you read deeper into the supplements and you get into the kind of the nuts and bolts of the setting, it becomes uglier and uglier as you go. And I think it's important to kind of drive home the nature of this particular world and why you shouldn't take it so seriously, because there is really it's a doomed world, and you're stalling for time.
Right. Yeah. So looking at Shadow of the Weird Wizard and the what it's presenting, you've hit a lot of these hallmarks, these goals that you've unlocked. Obviously, this is going to take some time, and once everything comes out, and people are receiving everything that they've done from the Kickstarter, is your general goal, because the way you support Shadow the Demon Lord is fantastic. I mean, there's obvious books, there's companion books, there's a lot of stuff that people can get that that shows that it's being supported, and of course your 1 or 2 page adventures that you can pick up that seem to come out almost every other week, at least it seems to me. Is Shadow going to be supported in that same aspect? I mean, okay.
One of I know that several people have asked me about the volume of content that I'm on the hook for writing for Weird Wizard. Understand that these are things that I was going to release anyway. These are all the things that I was kind of planning on doing, because I feel like it's easy. It's hard to make a role-playing game, and it's harder to make a role-playing game that stays alive. And it's my job if I could just release a cool book and everyone sees it, they may play it once or twice and then never touch it again. And I find that's a shame, considering the fact that people have invested in the book. I've got cool ideas, I think, that I want to share with others. And so I want to make sure there's plenty of content for people to engage with, so you can see the full breadth of what the game's offering.
Right.
Which is why Demon Lord has so many adventures, and why Weird Wizard will have 30 plus quests and 2 campaigns, probably plus a third campaign if things keep going the way they are.
Yeah. I mean, I know that a lot of people are looking forward to that, especially, as we all know, with the whole, with the OGL debacle, right? There's been a lot of the transition of people looking for alternatives to, WotC's D&D 5th edition in its current iteration for a variety of reasons, whether it be the OGL situation or whatever the case may be. And I do know a lot of people look towards Shadow the Demon Lord, and if I'm not mistaken, you really had a nice little boom there, as other people did during the OGL. But others may not feel that particular theme, or that that sense of humor that most of us appreciate. They may not, but I do feel that that with Weird Wizard, it does give them an alternative, where they enjoy the Shadow of the Demon Lord engine. They're looking for a world that's different in regards to your basic high fantasy, but it's not, doom and gloom, so to speak.
And that was right. And that was kind of that was why, as early as 2017, I was thinking about this particular game, because I realized that as much as Demon Lord does reflect a lot of my id, it's something that a lot of people just simply bounced off of. And for that reason, there's still a rock solid engine that powers this game. And if hateful defecation is an obstacle that people can't overcome, then I feel like then I'm doing a disservice to the game engine, and so I'll make something else. Now that's just so. And Weird Wizard is designed really to be played for everybody. I mean, it's not it is a fantasy game. Period. It does have some gray trappings, but also has plenty of light. And I think and you can kind of turn that dial in whichever way you want. If you want to run a grosser game towards Demon Lord, there's no reason you can't. But if you're looking for a more traditional, fantastic experience that has clockwork people and centaurs and rabbit folks and humans and halflings and hobgoblins and everybody else that you're expecting to see in a fantasy world, along with cool magic and a manageable advancement system that you're feeling like you're seeing big jumps as you're playing the game, then Weird Wizard's going to nail it.
Yeah, that was another aspect of the game that myself and other people really enjoyed about Shadow of the Demon Lord, was the fact that, visible progress pretty much is almost done in real time, that, they get to enjoy the game within a reasonable amount of time and see, if they survive, what it's like to be in the upper echelon of some of the aspects that you're playing. Whereas, as other games like Dungeons and Dragons, when you get to the higher levels, if you're playing it properly, or I should say not properly, but playing it by the book, it could take you a few years before you get to experience some of the wonderments of what it's like to operate on a high level. And likewise, it also gives you a reasonable amount of expectations with a campaign. If I throw down masks of Nyarlathotep, I could say and Bud is back here. I could say, we're going to wrap this in 6 months, and 4 years later, we're still playing the campaign. But whereas in Shadow of the Demon Lord, the engine, you do know within 12 sessions, you're going to have an enjoyable campaign, and you can say we're done and either move on to another session or move on to another game without having to worry about, God, how long is this going to take us to get through this? And I think that's another big highlight of both Shadow and Weird Wizard, that it gives you that those reasonable expectations.
I think it's also important for people to understand too that Weird Wizard and Demon Lord both, when you run an adventure or a quest, it represents a major moment in your character's life. So over the span of 10 adventures, 10 years of game time may happen in your world, where you're doing one adventure per year when you're assumed to be going on smaller adventures, side quests, or running a business, or do all the other things your characters might do. But we don't really care about that, because you're there to play at the table with your friends or your enemies or whatever, and throw dice and solve the mystery and kill the monsters and do the fun stuff. And all that other stuff, that all the gooey bits live in between sessions. Yeah.
And I know a lot of people that like that. And of course, with age comes less time. For those of us who don't have as much time to run these long-term campaigns like we did when we were, living in our parents' basement or playing every weekend in the dining room, you just don't have 8 hours, every Saturday and 8 hours every Sunday for weeks to do these kind of things. You just don't. But to be able to have, every game of 3 to 4 hours, over the course of 12 sessions. And, it's a wonderful feeling to accomplish a campaign and not have to, start worrying about retirement, by the time that you wrap it up. So let's see here. So welcome back, Bud. Sorry you had a bit of internet problems there.
My internet never goes down.
Yeah.
And then it just chose this moment to go down. But then anyway.
So we've been talking about Weird Wizard and some of the aspects of the game and in comparison to Shadow of the Demon Lord. We've already talked about the hateful defecation, so we've covered that, because obviously if we don't, people will be yelling at us. I know you had a question from Griff, and I think it kind of rolls into what we've been discussing. If you have that.
Let me just find it. Griff is the guy I do a podcast with. He's gone all in on the Kickstarter.
Oh, great!
And he said, and try and read between the lines here because he's a bit of a nut job. One of the reasons for Weird Wizard is that some people bounce off the tone of Shadow Lord. And he's put it aside, but Rob was so good at that tone, nasty stuff. What's it been like for him? It's like Marilyn Manson being asked to tone it down a bit and think of the kiddies. Some of his stuff for Shadows of the Demon Lord was dark, the harshest stuff I've read in an RPG. So what I can extrapolate from that is the reason for the creation of Weird Wizard is because Shadow Lord was a bit too much for some people?
Yes, very much. I think that I know that not everybody wants insanity rules or moral corruption or the new god who is supposed to be this virtuous deity turning out to just be a mask worn by the devil, or the fact that the universe was created by actually tearing apart a god and using the substance in order to spin creation out of that. There's a lot of dark and unsettling things and hopeless things that live inside a Demon Lord. And so Weird Wizard really was, for me, just an opportunity for me to say, but there's more to this game than just seeing how far I can push the envelope on the darkness front. I really wanted to make sure that everybody and anybody could come to this game and not have anything that I have written inside of it be an excuse for you not to play. Now, part of that too is that it is really interesting to have to tone it back because my inclination is like, well, it's I've got a wheel of choices on how this could go, and my inclination is to go this way, where this is really terrible and awful, but I probably should go this way where there's a happy ending, because that's just going to be good for the game. And so luckily I have extra readers that can scour it and then slap my wrist when I go too far.
Get out the Rob spray bottle, so to speak. Yeah,
right.
So.
It's a good job we don't have that demon made of dick, because a happy ending would be a completely different thing now.
It's true. It's true.
Oh, well, while we're on the subject, so if I think we don't have too many questions, but if you'll indulge the listeners here, we have Dave Peters. He's a listener of the show, and he does have a question, more of a personal question. So maybe this will roll into Weird Wizard or not, but he asks that which of your various iterations of your games is your own go-to? Which do you think is the best setting? So I would imagine he's kind of referencing, your, all the things that you've been, that you've worked on. Do you have one that you enjoy the most, or is there, or another one that if you're going to play something, which you may or may not have time for, but if you do, is there one that you tend to go to?
Well, the cheap answer, and probably the right answer, is that I really like running Demon Lord. I like running Demon Lord as a beer and pretzels game.
Yeah.
I love it best at conventions when I can have a somewhat irreverent crew of miscreants that are at my table, and we have lots of laughs and we're having a good time. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my go-to game. As I'm getting grayer and grumpier, I'm finding that I'm gravitating toward simpler and simpler game systems. I don't really have. Weird Wizard has all the same bones that the Demon Lord has, but there are a few extra complications in it that make it a little crunchy in some respect. I haven't run Weird Wizard as much, obviously, as I have Demon Lord. I've got more hours I can count on that game, but I have a sneaking suspicion Weird Wizard will probably take over. But as far as anything else that I've created, I haven't played D&D since 2019.
Mm-hmm.
The last game I played was Call of Cthulhu, Delta Green. That was the last game I played.
Oh.
I don't get a lot of opportunity to play as much as I used to. And in fact, it seems like as I get busier and again grumpier, the less time I have to do these kind of things, sadly.
Yeah.
I kind of get that. I've found as I've got older, I want the system to be simple. Crunches for the young for me.
Yeah.
With that in mind, when can we expect a Weird Wizard conversion for Rollmaster?
Right. that I'm still building the caloric based action economy system where you have everything you want to do in the game has a certain calorie cost. So then if you want to draw a sword, it's going to cost you 10 calories. So you have to make sure your character is constantly eating in order to be able to do anything in the game. And then we're not going to do second by second combat. This is millisecond by millisecond combat.
The only way?
It's the only way. I figure that because people complained about 4th edition that, man, combats just take a whole hour. You haven't seen anything until you finish round 1 after your 8th hour of gameplay.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah.
You have your heart rate meter. You got to keep that track going, right?
Oh, well, that brings me to a personal question. So in regards to Weird Wizard, so your sense of humor, obviously it rolls with us and many, many others. And I'm curious, when you're doing Weird Wizard, are there some allusions towards some of the humor that you've provided within Shadow of the Demon Lord? I mean, is there like a, rather than hateful defecation, is there like a contentful constipation spell or something such as that? Because I would imagine it would be impossible for you not to wear your sense of humor on your sleeve to some regard, even with things such as Weird Wizard.
Sure. Weird Wizard has plenty of the expected things that for any kind of fantasy game, but it also has very clear Schwalbisms. There's a spell that's called Pale Rider, and it's a nod to the Tom Waits album of the same name. But this he's not naked, but in my mind, he's naked. A naked old man who appears on your back, and he gums the top of your head and causes you to be frightened. So you're running around with this strange homunculus figure on your back. This spell comes from the Eldritch tradition, which is the creepy, weird, eerie, Lovecraftian, although I'm loath to use that term, aspect of Demon Lord, the cosmic horror angle. So like there's another one that lets you summon the maggot from some fantastical city, and this maggot shows up and sings, and it causes terror. And then round after round, you're rolling to see if it turns to a human-headed fly. So there's another one that lets you that. So there are these things in there, but they're not designed to be. You're not using them on the players,
right?
Characters, right?
Yeah.
These are things that I'm going to play. I want to play some alienist dude who's got this really strange book that I found after consulting with or defeating this cult dedicated to an ancient one, and I really want to see my character kind of dabble in this stuff because the best tools to fight evil is evil itself, or some line. And having those elements there are fun because people like that stuff, right? They want to see the full spectrum. And there's also good stuff too, right? I mean, there's plenty of happy spells that make you feel good and wholesome.
Right.
So I've got a question. Are there any games that are currently being made that you think, and you've been looking at them, I could write something really good for that, given the opportunity?
Yeah, sure. I think Mort Borg is a good one. I think it's one of those games that it's like, I just can't believe I didn't write that game. It just we played early in the pandemic, and that line about you were born when your mom was hanged, you fell out of the woods. It got me right here. But I also think that I look at a lot of games that are coming out, and they're like, I'd love to write for Cult. I've never worked on Call of Cthulhu. that could be an experience for me. Delta Green would be another one I'd love to do. But I also, I don't want to be morbid, but I turned 50 next year, and there's only so much left in the tank. And so I'm not sure that, and I know that right now that I look at my desktop and all the role-playing games I've got stacked on my desktop of things that I want to do, that they may, some are fragmentary, like here's a mechanic that I want to use in a role-playing game, or here's a cool setting idea. But I want to be able to hit those first. So I doubt my involvement with other RPG companies is going to be much going forward. I hate to say it. There's maybe one or two things.
I think you'd write a killer Delta Green campaign if you put your mind to it.
Oh, yeah, it'd be fun.
But what would it take for you, though, to come out of semi-retirement to collaborate on a Tom Waits RPG based on the Black Rider? That's my question.
Oh, man, it would. You wouldn't have to twist the arm at all. I'd be out there right away. Yeah.
I've been of the opinion for years that just the titles of every one of those songs would make a wonderful scenario as a campaign whole. And it's anytime I mention it, it's just like, oh, let's do this. I'm like, oh, I don't know where to begin. But the inspiration from that would be superb. Now, getting the rights though, I don't know. I mean,
Faith No More did. Faith No More's got the Real Thing role-playing game, and then there's a Dead Milkman game. Yeah. So who knows?
Yeah.
Role-playing games are everywhere now.
And there's a trend of, the band RPG that's been coming out as of late. I did back the Dead Milkman one, and I did see the Faith No More, and I think there was another one kind of straddling the edge, but I can't recall what it was.
Do you know what's a massive missed opportunity though? That there hasn't been a Kiss role-playing game.
Right. Yeah, that seems like something that Gene would have jumped on 5 years ago. But there's Hell Knight, and then there's I've got this game here called Gods of Metal Ragnarok.
Oh yeah.
And so there's a lot of that. I mean, I had way back, Primus and I were talking about doing a kind of tongue-in-cheek role-playing game that was, instead of your factions, you'd have the different strains of metal. And so you'd have your black metal and speed metal, thrash, death metal. And so these would each be character classes you play. Yeah. And you're running around in this Wahoo Gamma World style setting as you're killing monsters, but doing it to killer riffs. That would be a pretty interesting game.
I'd play that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So if you got a moment, I got just another question for you.
Sure.
And this may take you back for a moment, but so Dave Peters, he actually had another question. And he wants to know of the many companies you've worked for, and there's been quite a few. Is there one that is your favorite, and if so, why?
Green Running Publishing is my favorite. Even though I haven't worked for them directly, I mean, I've did a few things here and there, but I haven't worked for them directly since 2008. They remain very much family. And Chris, Nicole, Hal, Steve, Evan, Sparky, everybody else that works there, I still remain in touch with all of them. And I owe them a great deal. Without Chris taking a chance on me, I probably would not have, my career might have sputtered out. So yeah, Green Renine is my favorite.
It's fantastic.
Best times.
Yes, fantastic. Yeah. Speaking of them, this is another thing that I ask certain creators who've been around for a while. How does it feel to see things like your book, The Black Company, for sale on eBay for $350 or more?
Makes me wonder if I still have a copy in my closet. Yeah, I remember when Tome of Corruption for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay went for hundreds of dollars, and I was really surprised. But I wonder how long that kind of thing is going to be around. I mean, I know the Monster Manual that's currently up for sale for $26,000 on eBay. But I mean, it's also signed by Gary and Dave Sutherland and others. I wonder.
Gary signed everything.
Yeah, he did. But
I've got 2 books signed by Gary Gygax.
But I do wonder, like, how much because nothing goes away now. You can do print on demand for anything, so books never go out of print. And so I wonder if the secondary market will ever take a bigger hit, or there will be purists out there who say, no, I want the real deal. I mean, my prized possession is Greyhawk, the folio, from the
wooden box, is it?
The wooden box, yeah. I don't have the wooden box. I've got the facsimile of it, but I have Greyhawk and Eldritch Wizardry and something else.
Is that with the terrible Beholder picture on the cover? Yeah. That's really bad, isn't it?
It's so bad.
The thing is, I think the way probably to look at it is if you look at the vinyl market,
right?
You can reprint something to your heart's content, but people are always going to want the originals.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think it's going anywhere soon. Like, for example, like the Warhammer stuff, they don't own a license to print it anymore, so they can't. So that's all you're getting is going to be PDFs and what's out there.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, have you seen how much the Career Compendium goes for?
No. What's
£300?
What?
Yeah.
I don't even think I was credited on that book, despite the fact that I've some absurd number of those are mine, but whatever, it's fine.
Yeah. Children of the Horned Rat is another one, and I through very graciously from a friend over there in the UK, she sold it to me, but it was still 50 pounds for the book. But that's a good price for it. That is a good price for it. But even my friend was just who owns a game store here in California. Someone dropped off a bunch of stuff, and in there was your Elder Evils 3.5.
Yeah.
And he's asking me, so he's sitting down because he was going to sell it at Strategicon amongst other things. He's like, can you help me price this stuff out? And I'm going through it, and then I realize it's Elder Evils, and I'm going, oh, that's another, a Schwalb joint. So I'm like, pricing stuff out, and I'm like, this one's not going for anything. I'll give you $15 for it. And he's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you're bullshitting me, aren't you? I'm like, well, hell, you got to give me something for helping you do this work. So, but that one itself was still, kind of pricing out about, $80 to $100 or more. So yeah, the Draconomicon. I mean, obviously even the big one for 4th edition, the Dark Sun campaign setting, even that, but it's the thing, everyone's looking for, as you said, the original stuff or people or things they can't find, because WotC's, either not going to create it for the 5th edition. So they're looking elsewhere, but, or just collectors like myself, just like I want that sacred goblet on my shelf. And when are you going to run it? What are you talking about? It's right, sitting there.
Don't run, just look.
Yeah, we don't. It's like Legos for my children. I've got Star Wars Legos dangling from wires up there, and they were all purchased for my son for his birthday when he was younger. And of course, the question is after we're done building it together, he's like, Daddy, when can I play with it? And it's like, what do you mean?
Never.
We don't play with Legos.
So I have a question. Out of the things you've written, let's not include Demon Lord or Weird Wizard here. What is the thing you're most proud of that you think I really nailed what I was going for?
The most current version of Book of Fiends, I'm pretty proud of. That was for 5th edition. Grimm is launched like my entire career, so I've got to take some pride in that. But really, the book that I think captures where I was and what I was doing, what I was thinking, and how I attacked game design best is probably Tome of Corruption for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay.
I have a copy of that. I don't even have it ready.
It's such a weird book. It's got everything in it. Everything.
Yeah.
You can be a giant head walking around with spider legs. You can do it all.
Yeah, so conversely to that, what was the thing that this is a 2-part question. What is the thing that you feel didn't quite go what you want for, and why is it 1,000 Thrones for Warhammer?
Right. Thousand Thrones was, in hindsight, I would have done that book with fewer writers. I think everybody who worked on that book did a great job. I think the campaign doesn't hold together as well as I would have liked, but it was a big, ambitious project, and I was pretty happy the way it turned out. I know it was not what everybody really wanted. I think that's such it's a funny process because we really struggled with that. There were a lot of tonal changes and tonal differences. There's some new people who had never written for an RPG before, and we're trying to catch people up. And then at the same time, there were some writers who really wanted to do super elaborate things that were really probably not right for the tone we were going for. So it was just a real struggle. And by the time I pushed the go button on that book, I was good and done with it.
I get that, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'll give this some context. For my YouTube channel, when I hit 1,000 subscribers a number of years ago, I did the 1,000 Thrones, because obviously 1,000. And at the time, I'd been running it for my own group. And it was the only time they'd ever asked me to stop running a game. because they said you lose player agency when the child takes you over. It's Deus Ex Machina when the vampires appear and just take the stuff that you've worked the entire chapter for. And we were actually discussing this before you arrived, and I got me 1,000 Thrones down. And for the most part, the good chapters are the ones that you wrote. Well,
thank you. I'm sorry the book didn't do what it should have done. It was it's also a weird point too in that the life of that line, because we were my interest at that time was really focused on doing a 3rd edition of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and somewhere in my hard drive is our 40,000 words of that game that I had written in anticipation for doing a new edition, because we had pretty much hit all of it that we could do. And the big campaign was kind of the last bit when we had already, and there was also a lot of pushback about us going too far afield. They really want our focus to be on the old world and not go too far into Lustria or the Dark Elf territory, or really even, we were just focused mostly there. So the 3rd edition that I had planned on doing would have been an evolution of 2nd, then of course Fantasy Flight Games got the rights and they did their version, which was so different that it was pretty shocking.
It was a hybrid board game, wasn't it?
It was, but Jay Little's got great design chops, and he pioneered a lot of things that people are still fooling around with in game design today, just based on that game. Using dice in the way that he did, using zones and having character sheets that were puzzle pieces. It allowed you to play a role-playing game in a way that I don't think has ever been done. Well, certainly wasn't it before, and could have done some really interesting things had other companies been able to pursue that same style of design. But the cost in that is so prohibitive. I mean, once you start getting into all the moving parts.
I think that was the big mistake they made, wasn't it? They made the basic rules stupid price. So the actual step into it was pricey.
I also felt like there was limiting it to 3 players was also tricky. I know some people may run with 2 or 3 people, but I've always had, when I run, I usually have between 7 and 9, and that's just a game I could never run with that crowd.
See, I bought a copy at Gen Con when I met up with a couple of us went over to Gen Con last year. I met up with Scott and Keith, who's not here, obviously, and I managed to snag a copy of it in the area next to where they do the auctions, and it just sat on my shelf looking at me. And I know I should get it down and give it a good read, because everyone I've spoken to who's played it said it's actually a really good game. It's not like Warhammer, but it's still a really good game.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
Sorry, go on. No, go ahead. So you had a thought.
I was just going to say I really like what Andy Law did with the fourth edition and T.S. Lucart. They did a great job with fourth edition Warhammer. I still have not played it, but I have plenty of the books, and I feel like it passed into pretty good hands from there. I think it's closer to what we were trying to do in second. It's a little crunchier, I think, but still good.
Yeah. I mean, that was actually my next question was, what do you think of fourth edition?
Yeah, I dig it. It's good.
Yeah, I spoke to T.S. Lucart at Gen Con, and we've got discussing, the end of Terror and Talapine, because obviously you have a city overrun by Skaven, and the idea that I said this to him at the time, it's ridiculous that after an entire city had been taken over by Skaven, you basically get told, oh, it was never really Skaven, it was Beastmen. It's too unbelievable, even for Warhammer. And he said it came from the high ups. This was going to be the moment where the Empire acknowledged the Skaven, but it came from Gabe Workshop change it. Were you aware of that?
Oh yeah, I was a developer on that book. Yeah. Where the rule was that you can do whatever you want to the old world, provided that you leave it how you found it.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
That seems to be quite different to what Cubicle 7 have.
Well, there's a span of 15 years too, where management has changed and their company goals have changed. I mean, we've been through Age of Sigmar and back, so I mean it's
because they've done a book on Lustria,
since,
and they're going to be expanding to other. They're going to do Ulthwan is one of the upcoming books, and I spoke to Dominic McDowell. I think it was last year at the UK Games Expo, and I asked him about Warhammer. He said when he found out that they got it, he actually cried because it was the first game he ever bought out of his own money. And Games Workshop said to him, "Nothing is off the table." Sounds about a bit of a different kind of
different approach. Yeah. So, well, before we continue and possibly wrap it up, Rob, I just want to let you know, if you felt cornered by the Thousand Thrones thing, but the opinion of Bud's RPG review doesn't necessarily reflect
it does
the opinions of Titterpigs.
Totally fun.
Oh, excellent. So, Bud, do you have anything else to add? Because we're coming up on the hour marker here, and
I would add going back Weird Wizard because it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it might interest you to know Griff has offered to run Demon Lord for us because he loves it. Yeah. But he's thinking of waiting until Weird Wizard comes around to run that for us instead.
Cool.
Yeah. No, it would be a different game, but both Weird Wizard looks fantastic, and I know it's going to be, and Demon Lord definitely is fantastic. So, Rob, I hope we've covered enough ground to be content in regards to Weird Wizard and Shadow the Demon Lord. I've listened to your conversations on some of the other podcasts, just to get an idea of what I should ask. And so just want to make sure that we give your current endeavor enough, attention as it deserves. And I'm looking forward to, even though there's a few days left, where are we at with we've got to get to 360 before we get free companies of the Four Towers here. And here's hoping that there's going to be a bit of a boost here in the remaining days. But if not, as you said, that seems to be coming. We just have to maybe wait a little bit longer for that, I suppose. So,
well, one final question. Did you know Dolmenwood were going to release at the same time?
No, I had no idea.
Because I think if Dolmenwood hadn't have released at the same time, it would probably have done a bit better. But
and you have you put your finger on one of the reasons why I have a drinking opportunity.
Yeah.
It's not a drinking problem; it's a drinking opportunity.
I mean, that's doing extremely well, isn't it? It's over 1 million or something, isn't it?
Yeah, try not to look at it.
Yeah,
don't blame you. I wouldn't.
I mean, I backed it, but it's its own thing. And it just also goes to show that there's plenty of room out there for all sorts of games.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, more so if you slap the 5E logo on it, but that's a different thing. But Rob, thank you so much. I do appreciate you coming on to Titterpigs. I know we tried to get you on last time and been trying to get you back. And I hope you did take a moment to, if you had some time to listen to our discussion with Ian, who was absolutely fantastic. And he's been hanging out, and we have a little online pub that we call the Midchester Arms every Friday evening, and Ian's been hanging out there with some of the other crew, and he's and we're looking forward to his game coming out too. I'm very excited about that because it was a great conversation. So thank you for, when we had to reschedule for giving us the opportunity to finally get Ian on after we got a little less busy ourselves. So
that was great.
Anything else you'd like to add? We will definitely have a link to the Kickstarter here and continue to promote it through the remaining days of it. But just want to make sure. Mm-hmm.
Sure. So Weird Wizard's still going till September 7th, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. You still have time to, if you don't know Demon Lord yet, Bundle of Holding is running a killer deal, and that is going for a little bit longer too.
I didn't know that.
Yep. So if you're missing, you can get the Legacies or the core book stuff, and it's a whole bunch of good, wholesome evil for a dirt cheap. And then also all the Schwalb Entertainment, that's my company, products on drive-through are 30% off until the end of the month.
Excellent.
So you've got plenty of ways to help feed my cats.
And for those who do exclusive gaming online, I believe you can find official Demon of the Shadow of the Demon Lord modules on Roll20 and also Foundry
and Fantasy Ground.
So all three of the major contenders. So you'll definitely check those out there. Well, Rob, again, I hope you enjoyed your time on here with Titterpigs. Would definitely love to have you back on again and just, maybe have a chat of whatever floats your boat. We can have a proper hour podcast going through the albums of Tom Waits and deciding which one is the best one. And I will be secretly crossing my fingers and poking you every once in a while to see if you want to do the Tom Waits RPG, but we'll just kind of
wait and see when he returns my call. We'll go from
exactly.
And just one final parting shot, Jonathan.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Tom Waits song?
Mine?
Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
that's a hard one.
Why I'm driving? It's you're going down to Bangkok. It's Misery is a River of the World. Everybody row. That's the song. Yeah, that's the one.
Yes. That's
mine is what's he building in there?
Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah.
That's an excellent one.
In there.
Yeah.
It's so sinister the way he sings it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, sings, narrates it.
Chimney Red.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's I mean, just roll dice and just let the song play. I think that's the best you can do with a Tom Waits RPG. You'll be happy regardless. So but again, Rob, thank you so much. I do appreciate your time here. And Bud, thank you for making yourself available to pop on and co-host. We'll edit out the little moment where you lost your internet connection here the best we can. So
I mean, I could have spent time with the wife and kids, but I mean, who wants to do that?
Well, you had to get the Thousand Thrones thing in too. So I mean,
I feel now I've got it off my chest.
Well, that's unless Rob and I have a discussion afterwards. When people listen, it will just be completely edited out.
He's going to cut it out completely. That's fair. That's fair.
All right. So thank you so much, listeners. Check out the description in the in the gobbledygook of the podcast. You will find a link to it, but we will definitely be sending out links through all of the social medias. And there we go. I think that's a good way to end. Ending is always the hardest part. We will see you at our next episode. Take care, everyone.
Hey, Titterpigs fam, just a quick reminder, we do have our Patreon going on. It's patreon.com/Titterpigs. You can show your support there. We have 2 tiers for you, a $3 and a $6 tier, so show us some love and be part of our growing community.
And speaking of our growing community, I'd like to give a shout out to our current Patreon members: Dr. Mitch, Jason Sheets, Bud's RPG Review, Dwayne Costa, William Payne, Lupus Malum, Salt Heart, Patrick Mullen, and our newest member, Dragon Girl 74.